Begin tonight with different breaking news. Exelon files to deactivate the Byron nuclear plant. Exelon says it plans to deactivate the plant in September. The company filed to close one tower September 14th, the other the 16th.
The debate over nuclear power is as hot as a firecracker on the 4th of July. Proponents say there are no real alternatives, and opponents say the only alternative is a major catastrophe. The state of Illinois is a leader in nuclear energy generation. This plant at Dresden was one of the first nuclear plants in the nation. Illinois now has 7 nuclear reactors operating at 3 sites, 2 each at Cordova and Zion, and 3 working at Dresden near Morris. Other plants are being built at Byron, LaSalle, Braidwood, and of course at Clinton. In a nuclear reactor, uranium atoms split into 2 dissimilar atoms. In doing so, they release energy and neutrons. The neutrons react with other uranium atoms, and a chain reaction takes place, resulting in heat. The heat generates steam from surrounding water, and the steam powers a turbine, giving us electricity. Most fears concerning nuclear power plants center around the invisible, tasteless, and odorless item called radiation, a form of energy emitted from radioactive materials. The concern is that too much radiation will harm the body, and that a serious accident at one of these plants will release a lot of radiation.
What you have to ask yourself is the increased risk worth it?
Here in central Illinois, a group calling itself Prairie Alliance opposes nuclear power, especially Illinois Power's Clinton station. The group has been fighting for over 2 years to close that plant. Since 3 Mile Island, nearly everyone has been expressing an opinion on nuclear power. Here in Illinois, Governor Thompson said he doesn't think that accident should cause Illinois to stop in its nuclear tracks. Despite a report from the State Atomic Energy Commission saying all of Illinois' nuclear plants are safe, Thompson has ordered that a master statewide nuclear response and evacuation plan be drawn up. Setting aside the debate over whether the plants are good or bad and living with the plants now in operation, the central issues become plant safety, coordination of emergency plans, and education of the public on the topic of nuclear energy. In late 1982, electricity is scheduled to start flowing from this plant. Cost estimates for Clinton's Unit 1 alone now run in the vicinity of $1.25 billion. Costs are sure to go higher if and when Unit 2 construction begins.
The Byron nuclear power plant hit a major milestone that's been a decade in the making. Alexis Carpella went out to the power plant, and Alexis' current workers say they owe a lot to now retired workers who laid the ground for the work.
Oh, that's right, Brittany. Electricity is always needed, so it takes a lot of employees to make sure that the plant is always running. Employees past and present celebrated 4,500 days straight of operation for Byron Station. 4,500 consecutive days of operation at the Byron Nuclear Generating Station calls for a celebration.
It's an astonishing accomplishment.
Retired shift manager Mark Rasmussen took his nuclear engineering degree straight from college to the Byron Station.
I started in 1982, and I just retired last year in 2019. And mostly as the operators, we were just sitting there ready to deal with any sort of things that came up that were unexpected.
Nuclear power plants heat water to produce steam. That steam is then used to generate electricity.
So a lot of the work that some of us did earlier in our careers here back in the 70s and 80s was addressing those issues that made the plant less reliable. And this accomplishment of 45 years here, and especially the 4,500 consecutive days, it's kind of a vindication that what we did was effective.
Current plant manager Harris Welts says routine maintenance established by people like Rasmussen has been critical.
4,500 days goes back to 2007, so that's a lot of years and a lot of work to make that happen. A tribute to all of our 700 employees that work here at Byron Station to operate the plant day and night, address all of our issues and keep the units running all the time.
In the end, Walt says the effort is all about safety.
Our number one goal is to generate electricity for the communities. We have to operate our plant safely and reliably every day, and then we have to do the right maintenance on our equipment at the right time so that we don't have any issues operating the plant.
A recent 20-year license extension means the plant will provide power for years to come.
It's a very important thing. Things like renewables are important, but they're intermittent, whereas our nuclear plants are always operating in the coldest weather and the warmest days in the summer.
Officials say that the units were originally designed to operate for 40 years. Maintenance is credited with extending that life for 20 more. To see more of that celebration look like, head to the article on mystateline.com.
Wow, from 40 to 60, that's a pretty big accomplishment.
It is a huge jump, too.
All right, thanks, Alexis.
Tonight, the community got the chance to see the Byron nuclear plant in a different way. The plant held its community open house. There were tours of the plant's control room, simulator where the operators trained to run the plant. Other activities included virtual reality training, nuclear worker dress out, and bus tours of the cooling towers.
Everybody wants to make sure that we're putting good sources of electricity out there, and nuclear power is one of them. So it's important for people to come and see something that runs 24/7 and it can power more than 2 million average homes. That's a really big deal for us.
According to officials, tonight was the first opportunity people got to tour the cooling towers.
People don't know there's nothing nuclear inside of a cooling tower. There's no reactor in there. It's just rock river water being cooled.
Soaring at 495 feet, the natural draft cooling towers are an iconic part of the Rock River Valley. At a recent open house, people lined out the door to get their first look inside the towers.
Safe plant, a lot of great procedures in place to make sure we run it safely. We run just about 24/7.
Open houses, I think, really help relationships and help people build some trust and understanding of what goes on in the plant, so it's not a mystery, and that helps build trust.
Byron Mayor John Rickton says it's important the public understands more about nuclear energy. The Byron plant produces enough carbon-free electricity to power more than 2 million homes and businesses each day. But the daunting towers hold big concerns.
A lot of ways people are afraid of nuclear power. You do have issues of radiation and what we do with the leftover spent fuel rods.
Lack of funding and public information on the power plants could threaten the closing of Byron and other nuclear plants. Exelon, which owns the plant, says it works hard to control waste and pass legislation to sustain this clean energy.
The future is tough to predict. I don't know. We all, of course, in Byron, we all hope that it'll be around for a while because it produces a lot of good for our community.
Working for you in Byron, Hope Salmon, 23 News.
Our team, Michelle from Good Day State Line, telling us what to catch up with this week on her show.
Yeah, this Sunday on Good Day State Line, it's going to be a little different than usual, much like you've seen. No in-studio guests here on Eyewitness News in the morning this week. We won't have any on Good Day State Line either to do our best to keep social distancing. We are really lucky, though, because we have some great brand new segments that we shot before the coronavirus outbreak got to the state line. So we're sharing that with you this week, including an exclusive trip inside the Byron nuclear power plant. Welcome back to Good Day State Line. The Byron nuclear power plant is going through their refueling outage that happens every 18 months. Last week, we got a chance to take an exclusive tour inside the plant. Today, we're bringing you part one. Let's take a look. Today we're at the Byron Nuclear Generating Station and we are getting an exclusive look at what's going on inside. All right, I'm here with Debbie Johnson. Debbie, what do you do here?
I am the Reactor Services Manager for Byron Station.
And what does that mean for anyone who has no clue, including me?
So basically that means I am the manager over a team that does all the nuclear fuel handling on site. We do core offload and reload, and also I'm the manager of a team that disassembles and reassembles the reactor head for refueling outages. So this is a shot of our reactor core. We have 193 fuel assemblies in our reactor. This is a refueling outage, so we want to remove all our fuel assemblies over to the spent fuel pool. We will put in 89 fresh fuel assemblies when we reload. Once we get the fuel out of the core, we've got some maintenance work that we want to do. But currently you are seeing the refuel machine pick up a fuel assembly, and now it's traversing to what we call an upender. They'll put it in the upender, and then we will send it to the other side of where there's a spent fuel pool, and then they'll pick it up from there.
So this goes on continuously during this process?
Yes, it's a continuous evolution. We have 4-man crews, and they will rotate 24 hours a day until it's completely offloaded.
And that one's gone?
And that one's gone.
So how long does the entire process for each individual?
Each individual fuel assembly takes about 10 minutes, from latching it here in the reactor core to putting it into the spent fuel pool on the other side. So then it shoots over to this side, and that's where we pick it up with this machine. And now they are putting it away in the spent fuel pool. It's going into a rack here.
And the water's very important.
The water is very important. We need to, for storage of the fuel, we maintain 23 feet of water over the top. We do have a little bit of variance when we actually are physically moving a fuel assembly. We only need 9 feet of water. And that water helps protect us from the radiation. There is boron in our water as well. 2,300 parts per million is our minimum for a refuel outage. And we will maintain that through our chemistry processes. They take samples and make sure that we are within our values.
So what do you do with the spent fuel?
What do you do? Once we're done with it?
Yeah.
So it sits in the pool for approximately 5 years as a minimum at 5 years. And then we do a process called, it still has some half-life of uranium in it, so it needs to cool down, what we call cool down, and then we can put it into a dry cask storage process, which is putting it into a concrete stainless steel cylinder that we process, and then we send it outside onto a pad.
And then it's done living its life.
It's done living its life, yep. It is done. There is no risk. We're fully protected, by the water the whole time. We pick up very little dose during this evolution, and we have so many redundancies in our equipment and fail safes that there's really very little risk. We wear the protective suits for contamination.
Okay.
Not for radiation.
That's
just for
definitely something I
contamination.
wouldn't have guessed. I would have guessed it was protection, but
Right.
it's not.
It's just protecting us from, actually our water at Byron is pretty clean. It's very clean. However, there is some contamination in it, so we just want to make sure that we're protected, so that when we take off the suits, we just we walk around, we go home. But technically they don't protect from the radiation because it's so low.
So just on the ground level, what exactly is nuclear? I'm going to have a tough time saying it. I don't work here. What does nuclear fuel used for?
Well, we use nuclear fuel to heat up the water.
Okay.
That turns to steam, that turns the generators that makes electricity.
There you go. That's the most
in a nutshell.
Yes. So people, everybody doesn't know. I'm not too clear on what goes on in this building. I'm not going to lie to you either. So what is the nuclear reactor and what does it do here?
So the nuclear reactor is the housing unit for all the fuel assemblies. Okay. We will load the reactor core. It's full of water, and we drain down the water. We put the reactor head on it. We do put tension the reactor head. It is a fission barrier for the nuclear fuel, and then it provides a housing for the fuel so that as we generate the heat and sends the heat into the steam, which turns the turbine.
Welcome back to Good Day Stateline. We were lucky enough to get an exclusive tour inside the Byron Nuclear Power Plant while they're going through their refueling outage before the coronavirus came to the state line last week. We got a lesson in nuclear power. Today we're checking out the control room. I'm here with Mark Canavis. He is the vice president here at the nuclear power plant. So how often do nuclear power plants operate?
Typically, most plants, depending on the economics and the different kind of fuel, Byron is a station where we have to refuel the reactor every 18 months. Some plants go 2 years, so it depends upon the design, but we do it every 18 months. So every 3 years, we get the joy of having 2 refueling outages in a year.
Fun.
So we have one right now, and we'll have one in October. But typically, we will shut one of the reactors down. We'll put a third of the reactor core, which is 193 fuel assemblies, will be new assemblies, and we will discharge the old assemblies. And we use that opportunity when the plant is shut down to do necessary maintenance that we couldn't otherwise do online.
So that sounds like a lot of people are involved in this.
It's a lot of people. There's about 650 direct employees at Byron. and we bring in about 1,500 contractors.
That's a lot of jobs, which is a great thing.
Yes, it is.
A lot of human beings in this building, which, I mean, that's why there's so many security. Well, that's one of the reasons probably why there's so many security stops to get in, and there's so much going on. Everybody is wearing some sort of identification because it's obviously a place where you have to be safe and you have to be accounted for when you're in the building. So if someone is interested in doing this for a living, what's like the first step out of high school or a little bit older? How do you work here? How do you get in this line of business?
Yeah, I mean, there's many paths. So there's a technical path, people with engineering degrees, chemistry degrees, people who are in the Navy nuclear program are attracted to us. We bring in about 10 interns every summer. And they get to work in the plant. They get to say, hey, is this really for me or not? But really, what a lot of people don't know is people with a vocational school aptitude and education, we welcome those. And we have partnerships with junior colleges. We have partnerships with associate degree programs, and we hire those people.
So what's your favorite part about working here?
It's actually, there's something different every day. And it's, kind of like the TV show. You never know what's going to come through the door. But it's a wide variety of things and people. And really the people stories are the best part of the job because everyone has a story. Everyone has a life outside of the Byron plant. And the great part is we get to talk about those and experience those. So that's really the part. But pulling a team together in a refueling outage like this is incredibly satisfying. I mean, you're disassembling a power plant that can service 2 million homes, putting it back together, and then running for 18 months. It's just an amazing accomplishment.
We are in the control room now with Alex Hamblin. You are a shift manager here, and this is like a very important room.
It is. So this is where almost everything in the plant is operated. We have switches that operate pumps, valves, everything that controls temperature, pressure, and the reactor power that powers the electricity.
So how many people work in this room?
At any given time, we have about a dozen people that work in the room, and we have 5 different shifts, so almost 60 employees.
And this room has to be occupied at all times, right?
Right, yep, at all times, there'll be no less than at least 3 of us.
Okay, and there seems to be a lot of activity going on in this room, at least noise-wise, lights, buttons. What actually is happening in here?
So from this room, we're able to monitor everything that's happening out in the entire plant by the use of lights or meters. So what we're doing in here is we're just observing everything that's happening locally. And if we see something that's not quite right, or if we're seeing something that we need to look at further, then we'll send somebody out there to take a look at it.
Okay, so when I walked in, I thought I took a trip back in time. Has this been around for a while?
Yes, so this control room is almost 40 years old.
Okay.
And at the time that it was built, it was cutting edge. So because of that, you'll see that every 18 months when we're in a refueling outage, we're constantly replacing some of these old pieces with up-to-date modern technology.
But like you said, it's always working, so you have to do it when the outage is happening. Something's always being done in here.
Yep.
So what is your favorite part about working here?
My favorite part is really just being part of something that gives so much back to the community. We're powering 2 million American homes here from here. So you feel the weight of the responsibility, but also the gratitude of being able to give power to people's homes, power for heat, power for lights.
All right, so now we're on the other side, and there's a lot more happening over here. What exactly is happening over here?
So right now, all of our major systems are turned off, and all of these lights that you're seeing that are on are the alarms telling us that something is different than how it normally is.
Okay.
So that's a cue for us to say, okay, these systems that are normally on and normally full of water are now empty and turned off, exactly how we want it to be in an outage.
Right, but if this wasn't an outage, this would be a major problem.
Yes, this would not be a good day for us if this was not in an outage.
Thankfully, everything is under control.
Yes, we did this all on purpose.
Yes. I have a feeling that part 3 of the power plant might be your favorite. Don't miss it next week right here on Good Day State Line. Welcome back to Good Day Dateline. We've spent the last few weeks showing you an exclusive inside look at the Byron Nuclear Power Plant. This week, we're going inside the cooling tower. Let's take a look. So what are we looking at?
Well, this is the actual rotor. These are the rotor blades. This is where the steam comes in. It actually catches on the backside here and actually cups the steam that makes it turn. So they got this type of thing that catches this is the rotating element it's called. The ones over there are stationary, so between them, you direct the steam impingement so that the turbine goes around.
Okay. So what is this doing down here? Are you guys cleaning it?
Yeah, what we do, every 18 months we go into an outage. We basically take these, we sandblast them, and then we do what's called NDE, which is a microscopic evaluation inspection. Make sure there's no hairline cracks in these things.
That's why you need this.
Well, we actually have more sophisticated equipment to that. But these thing turns at 1,800 RPM, a lot of energy and steam, and you got to be worried about the blades not cracking, because if one cracks, it'll throw it like a couple miles.
Oh wow!
So it's a lot of energy.
How long does it take to clean one of these?
How long is what?
How long does it take to clean?
24 hours.
Oh.
It takes 24 hours to clean it, then another 48 hours to inspect it, and then we put it back in.
That's quite a job.
A lot more moving parts than it sounds. Basically, there's a lot of stuff to it. So basically, you got different blades. I won't get into steam energy and all that, but this is where the higher pressure steam comes, and as it cools down, it goes out to the bigger ones, and then it goes to the next turbine after that. A total of 4 turbines.
How many of these are there?
4.
Oh, only 4. Okay. I was thinking this was like where there was 180. I was like, my God. Can I touch it?
Well, go ahead, you touch it. It's not going to bite. It's not sharp or anything.
Oh, it's sturdy.
Very. Very sturdy.
You can't break this. Okay, so we climbed up this massive tower, and we will definitely show you what that looks like. And I'm here with Kelly. Kelly, tell me a little bit about yourself and exactly where we are.
I'm a maintenance program specialist here at Byron Station. We're inside the Unit 1 cooling tower during our Unit 1 refueling outage. As you'll see, there's some workers behind us, and they are doing inspections to ensure that we can have longevity of our plant.
So this is the tower that's getting, what's that word again? What's happening here? This whole project?
Refueling outage.
Refueling outage. This is it where this is happening, or this is the cooling tower for the.
There's a lot that goes on here. This is just the cooling tower. So what the cooling tower actually does, and what comes out of it, is water vapor. We take the water from the Rock River to cool what we call the secondary side of the plant. So it cools the secondary side of the plant, which has nothing to do with cooling any of the fuel or safety-related equipment. So this cools the secondary side, which is our power generating side.
So this is what's going on during the cleaning project, which is
our refueling outage.
Refueling outage. So there's a lot of people making sure that everything's going right. That is just kind of what's going on, I think, in the entire plant the whole time, is people making sure everything's running smoothly. And obviously right now during this outage, that's very, very important. I'm cold, which is why my mouth can hardly move and talk right now. But we do, thank Kelly for showing us all this. This is an exclusive look. Not everybody gets to come out here.
You can only come to the tower when we are offline during a refueling outage.
And you have to wear one of these. And there's the sky. What a cool experience. Thank you so much to the entire team there for letting us be a part of that.
Since the mid-'80s, Byron's nuclear generating stations produced power for more than 2 million customers, but that could change in the next few years if operator Exelon follows through on its threat to shutter the facility. Brittany Toulis spoke with plant and city leaders about reports on the potential fallout.
It's pretty much essential.
Byron is a small town, home to about 3,800 residents and a downtown made up of a few main streets. But it's also home to the Exelon nuclear generating station that provides power to over 2 million homes and businesses. And Byron agencies see the financial benefits, which is good for the city, but makes the plant a financial weak link.
It brings substantial tax money to the school, the fire department, the public library, and a number of folks who work there, who live here, and who spend their money here.
Exelon filed a motion with the Securities and Exchange Commission to lower the property taxes paid to the different entities. Because right now the site costs the company more than it brings in, which in the long run isn't sustainable.
Years that operated plants at below value, that they weren't making money because other plants weren't making money, but there's a certain time where that's going to be hard to continue doing. So if plants aren't making money because they're not fairly compensated for via different policies, then the company's going to kind of look at it and see whatever they need to do.
As of right now, Exelon has committed to operating for 3 more years. But since it's a clean energy source, the company wants taxing bodies to give it the same benefits other energy sources are allotted.
There is no burning in the fission process inside of our reactors, so it is carbon free. So to be able to generate power for more than 2 million homes without putting carbon in the atmosphere, even environmentalists say this is a very important thing.
ComEd feels like their nuclear plant is at an economic disadvantage because it does not get incentives like solar or wind energy does, not subsidized.
That was Brittany Toulis reporting Exelon employs more than 800 workers and during refueling can bring in an additional 1,500 temporary workers.
Exelon's announcement has far-reaching effects.
Michelle Rave joins us in the studio. Michelle, people who talk with you say they're blindsided by the news.
That's right, Eric and Mimi. Current and former employees, along with Byron residents, say they were sad to hear the Exelon Byron power plant would be officially closing its doors.
The announcement that the Exelon power generating station will close its doors has many Byron residents reeling.
It's just going to devastate us some more with this virus going on.
Donald Murbach is a former Exelon employee. He worked at the Byron plant for 20 years and says he dealt with a similar situation in 1998 when the Exelon plant in Zion shut down.
I worked there and made so many friends over the years. I took care of the cooling towers for those 20 years, and so I worked with the maintenance departments, you name it.
Murbach thinks many employees who are close to retiring will most likely take the option.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people at the plant now that are going to retire just because they're old enough and they can, and so that'll ease the burden on them, but there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to be able to replace the money they're making at the plant.
Longtime Byron resident Robert Sund says it'll be a major loss for the community.
We need to keep that open. We got to do our job. Right here in Byron, we can make a noise by keeping it open. So I'm asking the company that owns it to reconsider and keep this plant open. We really need it.
One of the most recognizable structures in the state line will soon be out of commission.
The Byron nuclear plant will close in September 2021. Exelon Generation announced the closure earlier today. The company took the first steps towards closing the plant in February of last year. Exelon says Byron's plant is losing money. Declining energy prices and competition with fossil fuel plants are to blame.
Today is really a day for us to spend time with the workers. We have people going from shop to shop to let them talk, get questions, give them answers. So today we're just going to talk to our employees and give them as much information as we can.
The Byron nuclear plant has been running since 1985. The employees and tax money that comes along with the Exelon plant is the lifeblood for the city of Byron.
Nearby businesses worry what will happen when employees stop spending their hard-earned dollars at city shops. Byron's mayor talked with Dylan Siraki about the economic impact losing the plant will have on the city.
Some small businesses here in Byron are worried the plant closing could lead to the loss of regular customers.
The economic impact of the plant is really immense, and to lose it will be devastating.
Byron Mayor John Rickard was devastated when he heard about Exelon's plans to close the nuclear plant.
First reaction was shock. Second reaction was kind of really disappointed that it's come to this. Of course, there are any number of employees who work at the plant who live in and around Byron, who therefore shop here, get their gas here, go to restaurants here.
Peggy Bergmark has worked as a waitress at the Swedish Pancake House for the last 5 years. She says the restaurant was already struggling because of COVID-19, and now they're bracing for another loss.
We get a lot of people, that the retired ones and the one that originally worked out there, they come in periodically, so it's going to hurt us a lot.
Brittany Marth from Sunrise Family Restaurant tells me they can normally rely on consistent orders from plant workers.
We do orders from out there, so overtime meals, we get business from that, and that's a good chunk of our weekly, business that comes through. It's just to-go orders, but it's still something.
Another potential economic impact of the plant closure comes from tax money.
The city itself doesn't receive taxes from the plant, but the school district, the library district, the fire department district all do.
Marth has lived in Byron for the last 23 years. She's worried that potential loss of revenue could convince people to leave.
A lot of kids are here. A lot of people have moved here just for the school district because of their jobs. They know that this is a great place to be. I think that the school district is going to suffer, and people will move on and move out because they're worried about what's next.
In Byron, for your home team, I'm Dylan Saraki.
Well, no plant means no income for hundreds of people clocking in at Exelon. Many may try to leave before the Byron location closes.
Hi, I'm Mary, and I'm a 2019 graduate of Byron High School here in Byron, Illinois. One of the best things I learned at BHS was compassion and understanding for our fellow students who have special needs. Thinking that might be a career I would like to explore, I became a part of the Peer Partner program, where I helped students with special needs during their PE class. Because it was such a meaningful and positive experience for me, I am now at Illinois State University studying to become a special needs education teacher. Besides being a great place to live and raise the family, there are many other unique programs like this in our Northern Illinois community and across all of Illinois that are improving outcomes for people in our state every day. Byron Station contributes greatly to our schools, forest preserves, recreational facilities, and so much more. There are a lot of impacts that would result in the closing of the Byron Station that you could see in studies and hear on the news. But I wanted to remind everyone that at the end of the day, it will affect a lot of people of every age and people of every ability. It is important to keep the Byron and Dresden stations open. Please support clean nuclear power in Illinois. Check out our website, www.saveilnuclearpower.com.
Byron pulls together to save its nuclear power plant. The Byron School Board formed the Byron Station Response Committee last week. Members will work to identify and mobilize groups that will work to keep the plant open. Exelon announced it would retire Byron last month. The company blames dropping energy prices and competition from fossil fuels for the move. About 700 people work there. Exelon pays taxes to 11 area taxing bodies as well. Byron resident and former NFL player Sean Considine's already throwing in his support.
We are very fortunate to have the nuclear assets we have in our state, and they need our help. It doesn't seem like we agree on much these days, but for the life of me, I can't find one person who thinks Illinois is better off without Byron and Dresden power plants.
Byron's slated to shut down in September next year.
Another organization announces its support to save Illinois nuclear power plants from closing. That includes the Byron Station. The University of Illinois and Chicago chapters of the American Nuclear Society hosted a webinar. It's meant to educate state lawmakers and residents about the benefits of the nuclear power plants. The webinar also discussed how the stations provide funding for things like school districts. Panelists say they're worried about the effects the closures could have on the local economy and the environment.
Closure of those plants would set off what I call a carbon bomb. I mean, it would offset an entire year of wind and solar additions in the United States. In fact, just the 2 Byron reactors produce more carbon-free electricity per year than all 7,200 wind turbines in the state of California.
Exelon announced it would retire the Byron Station in September. A recent study estimated the total contribution of the plant to the Ogle County economy is more than 15% of the county's GDP.
We move now to continuing coverage of the planned closure of the Byron nuclear power plant. Another group stands up against the plan to shut it down. The Northwestern Illinois Building and Construction Trades Union says the loss of jobs is unacceptable at a time when COVID-19 has already dealt a severe blow to the job market. We reported yesterday that the Byron School District, Board of Education, and Fire Protection District support a proposal from Climate Jobs Illinois that proposes either keeping the plant open or having the state give the city of Byron aid if the plant closes. The plant is expected to close in September.
For months, local groups have tried to drum up support for the Byron nuclear power plant. It's scheduled to go offline later this year. Dylan Saraki has more on what State Line advocates are doing to keep the facility open.
The end of the legislative session is coming up on Monday. Local advocates are redoubling their efforts to keep the Byron nuclear plant open. Christine Lind is the president of the school board and member of the station response committee. She tells me they're encouraging people to fill out witness slips and reach out to lawmakers to voice their support. Lind says everyone will be impacted if the plant does close, not just those who live in Byron. A recent study estimated more than 15% of Ogle County's GDP is tied to the facility. It's also a significant source of revenue for taxing bodies such as the fire department and school district.
We're the people that are going to live with the consequences of shutting those plants down. We will see a significant economic impact if we allow those plants to close. And it's going to affect not only just businesses, it's going to affect children.
Coming up tonight at 9 and 10, hear from a local lawmaker who shares his perspective on the latest in Springfield. In Byron, for your home team, I'm Dylan Saraki.
Nuclear plant is set to close in the fall of 2021, but one group advocating for nuclear energy says could help it stay open. 13 News reporter William Ingalls has more tonight.
For the past 40 years, these pillars of steam marked the city of Byron from miles away, and the community hopes to keep it that way.
Before you take away something as valuable as nuclear energy, you got to make sure you have other pieces in place so you can keep that grid stable.
One group advocating for communities like Byron who rely on nuclear power is Climate Jobs Illinois. The coalition submitted a 10-point plan to the state advocating that nuclear power stay in place while Illinois transitions to renewable energy. The proposal has drawn support from local groups like the Byron School District, which says moving away from nuclear power could have massive consequences.
So to remove that, in the midst of trying to increase renewable energy, you're going to leave a big void. And that's what's happening in states out west, and citizens are paying that price.
That reality has lawmakers considering keeping the plant open, according to Representative Tom Demmer.
People have really brought an open mind towards what can we do to support these important facilities. And, there really haven't been significant opposition or pushback to that idea yet.
However, if the state decides not to keep the plant open, the CGI proposal suggests what it calls a just transition. This would have Illinois contribute 3 to 5 years of tax revenue and wages to the communities and workers affected by the change.
Supporting communities who may be like us, finding themselves in a situation where they're looking at potentially losing their greatest contributor to their local tax base.
Whatever the decision, Representative Demmer knows time is of the essence when it comes to the fate of the Byron nuclear plant.
We can't wait too long, or we risk getting caught up in something that's beyond our control.
A decision which will affect thousands in the state line. For your 13 Weather Authority, William Ingalls, 13 News.
Lawmakers have seen the proposal, but there's no set time for a vote yet. Leaders won't return to Springfield until January.
New at 6, an Illinois organization that represents union workers calls on the state's General Assembly to look toward the future.
The AFL-CIO wants lawmakers to pass the Climate Union Jobs Act. If the act passes, group members say it would put hundreds of thousands of union laborers to work. They could be used to build a 100% clean energy economy in Illinois by the 2030s. The bill would also preserve the state's nuclear fleet. Last year, Exelon announced it would retire the Byron station in August. A mechanic at the nuclear power plant says the closure would have a significant impact on his family's life and the community.
My wife is a school teacher at Byron High School, which receives a large percentage of its funding from the taxes the plant pays. The station is extremely important to the community. Without it, Ogle County would be a desolate area. Businesses would struggle and people would leave.
A recent study by Northern Illinois University estimates the total contribution of the plant to the Ogle County economy is more than 15% of the county's GDP.
Having the Byron nuclear plant is an anchor to our small community. Byron Chamber really prides itself in seeing the growth in the businesses with the nuclear plant, bringing in the people to employ, hiring our local people, and bringing in the outside help. So the foot traffic that comes through with our restaurants, with our grocery stores, with our gas stations, the nuclear plant definitely boosts the economy.
This is Byron, Illinois, is where Byron Nuclear Power Station is. We're in the middle of corn country. There's a lot of small communities around here. This place employs hundreds of technical jobs. People from Byron, people from Oregon, from Sterling, from Rock Falls, from all the surrounding communities. And it's supported these communities for decades now. It's the family aspect that really keeps me here more than anything. My name is Stephen Dunkel. I'm the Security Training Manager at Exelon's Byron Nuclear Power Station.
A new report sheds light on the local economic impact if the Byron Nuclear Power Generating Station shuts down. Northern Illinois University released the analysis. According to the report, the direct, indirect, and induced impacts would result in the loss of over 2,300 jobs. The study estimates the total contribution of the plant to the Ogle County economy is more than 15% of the county's GDP. Exelon Generation announced in August it would retire Byron. We've told you about a number of efforts to avoid the shutdown. That includes Byron resident and former NFL player Sean Considine offering his support to keep the power plant running.
Refueling outages to gain access to the reactor. That's where the all-important nuclear reaction takes place. Inside, there are hundreds of uranium fuel rods fully covered in water. Some would say this is where it begins.
This is where it begins. I'm standing in a shielded location about 70 feet above the Limerick Unit 2 reactor. Inside that reactor, in a controlled manner, we have billions of fissioning events, splitting the atoms to release energy. That energy heats up the water, which then generates the steam, which turns the turbine.
Every year, the Byron nuclear plant undergoes routine testing, and a job like that requires thousands of temporary workers. Karina Parada took a look at the economic impact. Karina, this isn't just important for the plant itself, but for state-line businesses too.
That's right, Eric. Byron residents I spoke with say they look forward to the added workforce during the outages. They tell me businesses countywide reap the benefits from Exelon's annual project. Over 1,000 new employees are flooding the state line amidst Byron's generating station's annual outage. In an effort to inspect, refuel, and do maintenance work before the winter months, Exelon shuts down one of its 2 reactors.
Because of the large amount of work, we'll bring in another 1,400 people to help us get a lot of work done in a short period of time.
Exelon Generation Communication Manager Paul Dempsey says jobs range from actual refueling to carpentry throughout the plant. He says the added workforce is spread out to cause less congestion on site.
We'll split the shifts, most people starting at 6 or 7 in the morning or at 6 or 7 at night. That way we can break it up so we only have about half the folks on site.
And with over 1,000 newcomers in the area, local businesses are seeing the fruits of those workers' labor. Byron Chamber of Commerce Executive Director Sarah Downs says it's a huge economic boost throughout Byron when Exelon hosts projects like this one.
We've worked really great together with them. They're very good supporters of the community, so we're happy to have them in town and encourage their employees to come.
One person happy to have them in town is Katie Lentz. She works at Wheezy Sports Bar and Grill. The Byron Watering Hole even offers a special promotion for outage workers.
We provide a free breakfast buffet for them every morning. They really enjoy that. The chamber has been really helpful with extending our license to accommodate them as they're coming in from work.
Downs says during the outage, all of Byron rolls out the welcome mat for their new guests.
We really want to be good hosts, businesses, community members, to encourage people to come back and visit this great town that we live in.
Following completion of Unit 1's maintenance, the Byron Station's second unit will also be turned off. That will happen in spring 2019. Byron residents tell me they'll look forward to that outage as well. Eric?
Karina, thanks.
The future closing of the Exelon Byron nuclear power plant brings questions about the future of the housing market in this small community.
At 6 tonight, 13 News reporter Lauren Baker sat down with a realtor in Byron who weighs in on what she thinks homeowners should do.
News of the Byron nuclear power plant closing down in 2021 sent shockwaves throughout the community. The big change has many thinking about their future, especially when it comes to their homes.
Your home is usually your biggest investment.
Since the plant contributes significant money to the local tax base, Byron broker Elisa Patterson says her phone has been ringing with calls from families who want to know if they should sell. She says the first thing families should do is take a step back and analyze what situation they're in to see if they actually need to make any moves.
Yesterday, I actually sat down with a family for about an hour and just kind of talked about things, and they're not, after the end of the conversation, they're staying on the same path that they've been on.
Patterson says says there will be some impacts to the housing market, as 70% of those who work at the plant live in Byron. But she says families need to think long term because other areas like Rockford and DeKalb are growing, making way for opportunities for people elsewhere.
We have Amazon that's at the airport. We still have our Rock River Valley is still a very thriving area. We've had bumps in the road. We've had bumps in the road for decades. But again, going back to the resilience is not just in Byron, it's in our entire surrounding area.
She says another reason people shouldn't be quick to do anything with their house is because of a housing shortage in the Rockford area. The Rockford Area Realtors says 636 homes were up for sale in Rockford this past July. That's a 44% drop compared to July of 2019, where there were more than 1,100 on the market, meaning Byron could become more attractive to buyers, despite the plant's planned closure. For your 13 Weather Authority, Lauren Baker, 13 News.
Patterson adds if you are concerned about the future of your home, she suggests that you write your local lawmakers about the impact of closing the plant.
The Byron nuclear plant is stepping in to help local libraries.
It's a tough time right now for educators. We're not sure what the fall is going to look like. So if libraries can go the extra mile this summer and maybe even into the fall, it's really going to help parents kind of fill the void a little bit that school might not be there for.
The station's donating 8 libraries $500 each. The money goes toward additional summer reading and educational programs. The power plant also awarded both the Bertolet Memorial Library in Leaf River and the Oregon Public Library money to upgrade their public computer areas.
It helps run our programs. Our patrons come and use the computers for signing up for unemployment, doing work.
In total, the Byron Power Plant donated $9,000 to these libraries.
State line workers raise money to help families affected by the coronavirus pandemic. Donations by employees at the Byron nuclear plant benefit nearly 24 local food pantries. Employees surpassed the initial fundraising goal of $25,000.
Our employee volunteer committees have identified a need for local food donations within our local communities. Together with Exelon Matching and various fundraisings, our employees have raised over $35,000 and donated to local food pantries and included mass donations.
About half the money raised went to the Northern Illinois Food Bank. Other organizations that benefited include Rock River Food Pantry and Rockford Rescue Mission.
The Exelon nuclear plant in Byron currently employs more than 2,300 people, but the facility is on the chopping block.
There are renewed efforts to save the power plant as state lawmakers mull over the Climate Union Jobs Act. Dylan Taraki joins us with details on how you can help.
Well, Eric and Hannah, a community group that is rallying to save the plant is hopeful residents will make their voices heard as the act moves forward.
It's made a huge difference in what Byron can be as a community.
Illinois lawmakers are scheduled to meet Thursday to continue discussing the Climate Union Jobs Act, which could pave the way for Byron's nuclear plant to stay open if it's passed. Local advocates have been urging residents to show their support for the legislation.
Best thing they can do is to sign a witness slip, which you can do electronically. If somebody has the time and desire, call your legislator. That would help too. It will make a difference. And the more signatures from as large a region as possible, the more of a difference it'll make.
Last year, Exelon announced plans to close the plant in September of 2021. Shortly after, dozens of community members joined together to lobby for it to stay open. Mayor John Rickard thinks the effort is paying off.
Rumor has it the conversations are going well. I think the momentum is shifting in our favor. Nothing's sure yet, but it's feeling good.
A recent study estimated more than 15% of Ogle County's GDP is tied to the facility. Rickard says keeping it operational is critical for the city.
Everybody can travel down to Springfield and fill the hallways, or the more efficient ways to do a witness slip, and committees do look at that. It gives them a sense of level of support from around the state and how broad that support is.
Advocates say they're also looking into other ways to plead their case to legislators, such as letter writing campaigns or phone banking. Eric?
Exelon has said over the last year, time is ticking for Illinois to save the Byron nuclear plant. But we now know when that time will officially be up. Byron's reactors will close September 14th and 16th, according to Exelon's filing to PJM. PJM, the independent group focused on energy transmission in our state. But the closing announcement does not mean the fate of the plant is sealed. But what steps still need to take place for Illinois to pass a bill that would save the Byron nuclear plant? And how long do lawmakers have to pass that bill before Byron closes its reactors? 13 News reporter William Ingalls breaks it down for us tonight.
The fight to keep Byron's nuclear plant open is a fight against the clock.
But it says, the door's closing. And unless something happens, the door's going to close.
Well, we really need to be looking at a horizon of weeks, not months, not 90 days. We need to be looking at a horizon of weeks. And I think that there's a huge sense of urgency to close the loop on the remaining outstanding items that we have.
The good news, according to State Representative Tom Demmer, is that a number of things in the clean energy bill are agreed on, like the state's plan to keep using nuclear power, but other things have a long ways to go.
There are still outstanding questions related largely to the treatment of coal and natural gas-fired electrical generation, especially a couple of large plants in southern Illinois.
As far as how likely it is for lawmakers to strike a deal before the plant closes, Byron Mayor John Rickard says it feels like its chances change by the day.
It vacillates between things are looking okay to it fell apart again. So at any given moment, it swings one way or the other.
And Rickard says the hardest part of the process as the city's mayor is not being able to do anything to help a deal pass in Springfield.
We're totally reliant on the ability and well-meaning of other people to put together a plan. We're not in control of our own future here.
But as time creeps closer and closer to zero, Demmer says a breakthrough could come any day and that lawmakers are ready to come back and strike a deal.
And so I think that myself and fellow legislators, we're ready to go back to Springfield at a moment's notice and try to get an energy bill compromise, get the votes in both chambers and get it signed by the governor so we can move forward with some kind of confidence.
For your 13 Weather Authority, William Ingalls, 13 News.
And Mayor Rickard said the city of Byron has started to make plans as a city as to how it would move forward financially without the nuclear plant.
These lights belong to the Wallen family. Their home's located on the 700 block of Hampton Drive in Byron. Aside from the trees and reindeer, stacks of hay are in the yard for people to sit on while taking pictures. Plus, reindeer food for children to take home is there as well.
I love when people are happy, and I figured if they came and saw this and they get joy out of it and their kids like it, yeah, I just thought it would be a good thing.
It's a great thing. If you know of any great holiday displays near you, let us know by emailing us at news@wrex.com, or you can reach out to us on our Facebook page.
It's really exciting, first of all, to be here, I think, for most of us.
Dozens of state lawmakers are returning to Springfield as the state Senate prepares to return to action tomorrow. Good evening, I'm Paul Cicchini.
And I'm Jennifer Roscoe. Lawmakers filed thousands of new bills, several of them leftover plans that stalled when the coronavirus hit. But now the State House is getting back into action.
A major employer in our region is at risk of shutting down the Byron nuclear plant, but there could be hope for surrounding communities at the federal level. Earlier this week, we told you about a deal in Springfield to keep the plant open that was being held up. But 16th District Representative Congressman Adam Kinzinger says a new congressional bill introduced in December could help out the area. It's called Preserving Existing Nuclear Generation Act. If the plant does close, the bill would provide funding to affected communities. That money would go toward immediate loss of tax dollars to keep essential services open. But ultimately, Kinzinger says the hope comes from Springfield and keeping that plant open.
What I do know is that it is in Springfield's court, no matter what that looks like. And I'm hearing, positive negotiations potentially. And I know that I'm going to do everything I can at the federal level to continue to try to help this to happen.
Lawmakers, including Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, are optimistic that a deal will be struck in Springfield this summer.
The future of an industry that was once a thriving part of the Illinois economy remains up in the air. Lawmakers failed to reach a deal with nuclear power plant owners during last night's sessions. Senator Dick Durbin's been vocal on the issue. He says half the state's electricity used to come from power plants. But as the national energy conversation moves away from coal and zeroes in on natural gas, that's left a big sector of the state wondering what's next.
What is the role of nuclear power in the future? Well, for one thing, it doesn't create greenhouse gas emissions and it provides electricity, but it has its own challenge of what we're going to do with the waste. Well, the people that are running nuclear power plants are trying to envision
clean energy. Save our jobs. Safe and clean. Save our jobs. Keep nuclear. Save our jobs. Zero emissions. Save our jobs.
Now I'm pleased to introduce the Deputy Leader for the Senate Republicans, State Senator Sue Rezin.
Capitol Watch tonight, labor groups met outside the State House this morning to call on lawmakers to support clean energy union jobs. News Channel 20's Jacob Emerson is working for you to break down the bipartisan legislation they're proposing. Jacob.
Yeah, Marcella, Illinois lawmakers hope to pass legislation this weekend that would transition the entire state of Illinois to 100% renewable energy by 2050. But with the vast majority of that energy being created by nuclear power plants, labor groups are pushing to make sure that transition is friendly to unions. That was the clear message of the Climate Jobs Illinois Labor Coalition rally this morning at the Capitol. They called on lawmakers to include funding for the state's nuclear facilities and the over 28,000 Illinoisans they employ. Legislators from both sides of the aisle joined the group.
This legislation preserves those plants. It saves good-paying jobs, and it sustains communities. And it makes the state's goal of carbon-free future possible. So tell the governor today to save our plants.
The Climate Union Jobs Act also mandating labor protections for those working on renewable energy projects receiving state subsidies. Now, right now, 90% of the Illinois' renewable energy is powered by nuclear plants. That's why those labor groups at the Capitol today say that both funding those plants and their jobs will help move Illinois towards a renewable future. Reporting live in Springfield, I'm Jacob Emerson. Marcella.
That ComEd probe is making the work of advocates and workers from the Byron and Dresden nuclear stations harder today. The groups rallied at the state capitol to try and stop the facilities from closing. Exelon says it will retire the sites later this year. The clean energy policies being discussed would give subsidies to utility companies, but those companies say they need more money to keep the nuclear sites in operation. Some state lawmakers are hesitant to give ComEd additional money due to the federal corruption probe. State Senator Mike Hastings says workers shouldn't be the ones punished.
Working people shouldn't be held accountable for the dark cloud cast by a few. Those people who did the bad things, whether it's at ComEd, they're going to be held accountable. You can trust me on that. We're going to write an ethics bill that's going to be very sweeping, and it's going to provide oversight on all the utilities across Illinois. So stuff like that happened in the past won't happen again.
Negotiations over a clean energy bill are still ongoing in the Capitol. Both the governor's Climate and Consumers First Act are filed, but legislators are expecting a new adjusted plan to be filed this weekend.
State lawmakers could soon let power companies raise rates on your electric bill. But new research shows there are other costs that come with pollution from coal and natural gas. It's part of the debate happening in Springfield as the Pritzker administration pushes for a new energy policy. Capitol Bureau Chief Mark Maxwell reports from the Capitol.
The earth is literally in the balance.
House Assistant Majority Leader Jay Hoffman thinks most voters would pay a bit more on their electric bill for a cleaner environment.
At the end of the day, that does cost money, and it's our goal to make sure that we have a very limited impact on the monthly bill of customers, because someone has to pay and the ratepayers would have to pay.
Just how much more remains unclear. As the wind, solar, and nuclear industries make their case for taxpayer funding.
There's no question that there's a huge cost of energy providers that emit pollution, that there is a health risk.
Democrats and Republicans are making the case that pollution from coal and natural gas carries a significant cost of a different kind.
They have a higher rate of asthma. They have a higher rate of other diseases that maybe other communities wouldn't have.
A recent Harvard study counted the health costs of pollution in Illinois.
If air pollution were to be reduced in Illinois or anywhere in the United States, the health benefits are usually fairly local to where the emissions reductions happens.
Researchers found microscopic particles from burning coal and natural gas caused more than 1,100 early deaths in 2017 and cost the state's healthcare system more than $12.5 billion, roughly a quarter of the state's budget.
I think everyone agrees that there's a real urgency here. The reports that just came out about the increased risk to human health that are increasing because of natural gas, those are the types of things that remind us this is not a 5-year or 10-year plan. This has to be right now. This impacts people immediately. This should have been done years ago, and we don't have any more time to wait. It has to happen.
Even though we're going to pay a little bit more in price for carbon-free energy, on the back end, the socioeconomic costs should be less. So less people going to the doctor for asthma, less diseases caused by the pollution that we may see from some of the old energy sources that we've been relying on.
Reporting in Springfield, Mark Maxwell.
The Pritzker administration proposed giving ComEd and Exelon up to $70 million a year to help keep their nuclear plants open, but also recommended launching a new state investigation after the power company paid a $200 million fine to avoid prosecution in a federal corruption case.
You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
During his State of the State address, Governor Pritzker made a commitment to nuclear energy. Listen to what he said on Wednesday this week.
The to-do list is long, but it includes key priorities like finally authorizing the overdue second cannabis licensing lottery and passing an energy bill that protects our nuclear fleet and builds up our wind and solar industries.
On the last-ditch effort to save the Byron nuclear plant, last night was the deadline for lawmakers to pass legislation to save that plant. Exelon says it needs lawmakers to sign off on funding to keep the plant open past August. Last year, the company announced it planned to close the plant due to declining revenue and energy prices. Since then, though, lawmakers and Exelon have worked to strike a deal. And while lawmakers say the two sides were able to come to an agreement on the Byron plant, it's another issue in that energy bill that prevents lawmakers from passing it. As 13 News reporter Mary Sugden discovers, this issue would impact a different state line community. Mary.
James, what's preventing an agreement on this bill is due to it containing the proposed closure of the Prairie State coal plant by 2035. The issue with that? It's co-owned by a number of Illinois cities, including Rochelle. Their bonds are scheduled to be paid off going into 2041, so those cities would be forced to continue debt payments for the closed plant while also buying energy from another green source. Now lawmakers are trying to find a solution, for example, eliminating municipal-owned utilities from the bill or giving financial relief to those communities. But the pressure is on to figure out a solution quick. Exelon has a tight window before it needs to make decisions on energy orders for plants like Byron, and those prices continue to go up, which is why lawmakers in our area are pushing for a special session this week to get it ironed out.
I think Exelon's biggest concern would be, now that the regular session is over, we'll take a special call to get us back. And I think they'd just be concerned that even though everybody's plan right now is to come back quickly, if a week turns into 2 weeks, turns into a month or 2 months, that's, not doable for them.
Negotiations are still ongoing. And there's a big group of us, me being one of them, who basically said, this is a priority, get it done. So I think there's a group working on it right now as we speak.
And this morning, a group of lawmakers held a press conference pushing for a special session to be held this week to get this bill passed. Now that the May deadline has passed, it means the measure would mean 70 yes votes instead of 60 to move forward. Meanwhile, Governor J.B. Pritzker says he's optimistic this measure will pass. James.
Neighbors work to save Byron's nuclear power plant. With the possibility of closing, hundreds of state-line jobs are on the line.
But the economic impact to businesses, schools, and local agencies could be in the millions. Dylan Sraki shows us the community effort.
It really is the 11th hour.
Monday marks the end of Illinois' legislative session, and lawmakers are still debating the Climate Union Jobs Act. The bill would give new life to the Byron and Dresden nuclear plants. Both are slated to close later this year.
Legislators need to know this is important to us, and numbers speak volumes. start making phone calls. Even if you have to leave messages, just say you're calling about energy legislation and you're asking them to support nuclear power.
State Representative Andrew Chesney tells me lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are in agreement on parts of the bill, such as including an equity component and opening the door for the expansion of green energy.
The hang-up is the nuclear plants on what type of subsidy that they would receive, because there's really a debate on how much dollars they need in incentives to have that balance so they can compete in the markets.
Local advocates who've been pushing the legislation for months are now redoubling their efforts.
We're the people that are going to live with the consequences of shutting those plants down.
A recent study estimated more than 15% of Ogle County's GDP is tied to the plant. It's also a significant source of revenue for taxing bodies such as the fire department and school district.
We will see a significant economic impact if we allow those plants to close. And it's going to affect not only just businesses, it's going to affect children.
In Byron, for your home team, I'm Dylan Saraki.
The fate of the Byron nuclear plant could be decided in the next 4 days. Lawmakers must pass a bill to give Exelon a loan. If not, the plant could close by September. Exelon first announced the plant would close last August because of revenue shortfalls and declining energy prices. Since then, Exelon has been working with lawmakers to strike a deal to keep the plant open. So far, though, nothing has passed, though there are still several proposals on the table. And as the state's deadline to subsidize the plant approaches, lawmakers say they're working hard to reach an agreement. 13 News reporter Richard Bodie spoke to local state representatives about the progress and if we could see a bill by midnight Memorial Day.
9 months to the day, Exelon shook the Byron area with the announcement of the closure of the Byron nuclear plant.
I've been certainly beating the drum on behalf of the Byron nuclear plant and really the impact that it would have on our regional economy.
Lawmakers have a deadline of Monday to pass a bill or earmark funds to save the plant, and right now Byron area Republican Representative Tom Demmer says 5 different proposals are on the table. But Demmer says he doesn't think any of them will pass as is.
We're talking about offering a subsidy to Exelon for continuing to operate certain nuclear plants.
Something Demmer is in favor of. The money would be used to buy fuel, and if the plant doesn't have the fuel,
It wouldn't be economically feasible to keep the Byron plant open if we don't take care of this by the end of May.
Rockford Democrat Dave Vella, who is a co-sponsor of one of those 5 bills, is also trying to keep the plant open. But there are 2 issues. First is the idea of giving a loan to Exelon.
Nobody's interested in just giving a blank check bailout to a corporation.
Demmer points to the federal corruption probe involving ComEd, a company owned by Exelon.
What can we do to make sure that the ethical problems and failures of the past don't present themselves again?
The second has to do with the price of energy, which is low, meaning there's less profit for energy companies like the Byron plant.
How much we can subsidize them to stay open for a little while.
And while lawmakers rush to save the plant, a union representative says they're heading to Springfield to rally to keep the plant open and save jobs. For your 13 Weather Authority, Richard Bodie, 13 News.
Demmer says negotiations are happening every day. They're changing by the hour, he says.
Union jobs.
Less than 4 years ago, lawmakers in Illinois negotiated to keep nuclear plants in Clinton and the Quad Cities from closing. Now they could face that same challenge again, but some area representatives say this time Byron's plant is a casualty to a recent ComEd scandal. 13 News reporter Richard Bodie has more on any potential to keep the Byron and Dresden power plants open.
Rumors of a closure may have circled the Byron power plant before, but Thursday's announcement left local politicians feeling angry, frustrated, and disappointed.
We know how important the Byron station is in terms of employment, hundreds and hundreds of good paying jobs.
727 jobs to be exact. In a statement, Congressman Adam Kinzinger called it a gut punch to the people of Illinois. State Senator Brian Stewart also pointed out in a statement it's not just the workers at the plant who will struggle, but also the surrounding communities.
It's been really the cornerstone of that regional economy for decades.
And now lawmakers are scrambling to save it.
I've had conversations with Exelon officials already, as well as folks in the governor's office, about certain steps we can take.
In his statement, Congressman Kinzinger called for the $200 million fine put on ComEd as part of a recent bribery scandal to be reappropriated. ComEd is a subsidiary of Exelon, the owner of the Byron nuclear plant. Representative Demmer weighed in as well.
People who go to work every day at the Byron station who had no role at all in that scandal and who don't deserve to bear the brunt of the punishment for the misdeeds of somebody else.
But Exelon points to market issues that challenge the plant and make it less competitive. To that, Demmer says legislators need to revisit those policies and strike a balance that makes sense for everyone. For your 13 Weather Authority, Richard Bodie, 13 News.
We spoke on the phone with Speaker Michael Madigan's office, who is implicated in the bribery scandal with ComEd. In response to the comments of Congressman Kinzinger and Representative Demmer, we were told to examine the conduct of past legislative leaders who have also been intertwined with utility companies. Meanwhile, Governor Pritzker reactivates working groups to look at legislation to help keep these plants open.
The clock is ticking as the nuclear power plant in Byron is set to close in September. But even with the closure approaching, lawmakers from our area are still trying to create last-minute efforts to save it. The closure of the Byron nuclear power plant could send ripple effects across the state line.
The Byron generating station is the economic anchor for Byron and the region. To take that away is like pulling the rug out from under us.
Last year, Exelon announced it would retire the plant this September because it says it's not making enough money. State Representative Maurice West says the plant closure could get rid of 1,400 jobs in the state line and hurt the community.
That's an $87 million hit just to the property taxes that the nuclear plant brings to Byron, let alone the community work that the nuclear plant invests to our community.
That's why lawmakers are pushing for this bill to be passed by May 31st, when the fuel needed to power the plant runs out. State Representative Dave Vela says the bill should be viewed as a loan to the plant that would provide it the money to buy the fuel to keep it running.
They would go and buy the fuel route, and then we would keep track of, whether they're making money or not. And if they're making money, then they'll pay back the loan. If they're not making money, then at least we're getting a bridge fuel that will get us from coal to renewables.
Meaning the plant could run longer while the town finds a new source of clean energy. Byron Mayor John Rickard encourages people to fill out a witness slip for this or any bill they support that vouches why the plant should stay.
The more witness slips that they see regarding the issue before us, the more a legislator can say, that's a lot of support.
Because with jobs and livelihoods on the line, leaders...
You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Governor Pritzker enters his third year without much to deliver to the environmental lobby. He made big promises in his inaugural address, and in his State of the State address last year said the days of utility companies writing energy legislation are over. Earlier this week, a number of supporters of a Clean Energy Jobs Act that would prop up wind and solar energy rolled out their new plans, a 906-page bill they proposed, saying this would bring about a clean energy, renewable energy by 2050 in Illinois.
It's June 16th, 6:47 p.m. We just got out of a special session. We came down here just today. I got here last night. We'll be heading back home after I get done with this video to address a couple things. So I wanted to keep you in the loop on some things, and then keep you on the loop over the summer. First things first, nipping in the bud. Yes, there was a legislative pay increase in the budget. I did vote for the budget, and I do not plan to take the legislative pay increase. I'll be working with the comptroller's office to use the dollars that are coming to my increase and donate it to some non-for-profits in the area. I'll keep you in the loop on that. Then why'd you vote for the budget? Because all the other things in the budget to help working families, to help those who need childcare, to help those who need human services resources that were in the budget. And I'm not going to jeopardize that one pay increase portion and jeopardize the money that could be used for those who need it the most. So I'm telling you now what I plan to do with the increase. I do not plan to take it, and I'll keep you in the loop on that. All right. When it comes to the energy bill, Byron nuclear plant, Exelon, the subsidies, we left without voting on the bill. It's still up in negotiations. And what's frustrating to me is that I'm not in the room where it happens. I'm not part of the negotiation team. I'm waiting for them to get back to us on what they plan to do. But they're hopeful that we'll be coming back in the near future, most likely later this summer, to make this happen. We have until September, to my knowledge, to help Exelon so that the Byron nuclear plant will not close. Also, I'll give you an update when that happens. But for now, it's still up in negotiations. And so I want you to know that it's still a top priority of mine to keep that Byron nuclear plant open. So we will see, and I'm hopeful that those who are in the negotiations will come to a resolution so that we can move forward and your stress levels can go down on what's going to happen with the Byron nuclear plant. We had a bill on the elected school boards for Chicago Public Schools. It passed, and I pretty much was at the whim of what my Chicago colleagues wanted me to do because it doesn't affect us here in Rockford. Moving on. And then we did a lot of bills out of concurrence today, which means it passed in the House, went to the Senate, it changed in the Senate, came back to the House to see if we approve the changes. And so I wanted to just give you that update. I'm about to leave tonight to go back home. But if you have any questions, feel free to call me or email me. 815-987-7433, assistance@staterepwest.com. All right, be well. Talk to you real soon.
A day after the Illinois Senate struck out on a clean energy bill, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker tried to revive talks. Eyewitness News is keeping you connected to the Capitol. Pritzker says the House and Senate could reach a deal in the next few weeks. Stakeholders have already agreed to include $700 million in any deal for energy giant Exelon. That would keep 3 nuclear plants, including Byron, open. But Pritzker did make an ultimatum after the fossil fuel industries started asking for more time to keep their plants open.
I will not sign a bill that does not match the gravity of this moment. That means that a bill claiming to contain meaningful decarbonization measures, but does not pass muster on the details and does not move us toward a clean energy economy is not a real climate bill.
The governor's office agreed to let 2 nonprofit coal-fired plants stay open through 2045 if they can capture and bury 90% of their carbon emissions.
Push for a 100% clean energy economy, but a large coalition of unions wants to make sure that they're included in that push. The Clean Jobs Illinois Coalition hopes to help thousands of union workers be part of the process to a 100% clean energy economy in our state. Advocates say it could also protect 28,000 jobs at nuclear stations in Illinois, including the Byron plant, by keeping them open.
The station is extremely important to the community. Without it, Ogle County would be a desolate area. Businesses would struggle and people would leave.
Lawmakers also say this plan could provide $50 million over 10 years for programs building an equitable and inclusive workforce. Advocates say they want to work with lawmakers to make significant changes without raising fees for customers.
The Illinois Senate returned to Springfield to vote on a highly anticipated clean energy deal, but instead it fell apart. The biggest coal plant in Illinois wanted to stay open beyond 2035. The original energy bill would have made the state coal-free by 2035. This morning, the governor's office extended the life of the Prairie State and CWLP coal plants to 2045. It's under the condition they can capture and bury carbon gases deep underground. Reports say that's when natural gas companies started making similar demands. Green energy groups are growing frustrated with the gridlock.
It would be deeply disappointing if we can't get this done this week. There is so much support outside this building and so much urgency around it for communities that are facing the loss of coal plants and need to plan for something that comes after that.
A last-ditch effort to pass a skinny deal also fell apart. That would have allowed for the Byron and Dresden nuclear plants to remain open.
Continuing coverage on the ongoing effort to save the Byron nuclear plant, and by this time next week, we will hopefully know the future of it. The Illinois Senate and House will both return to Springfield Tuesday and Wednesday to vote on a highly anticipated clean energy proposal. The plan was to pass the bill before lawmakers left at the end of May at the end of their session, but that never happened. Exelon said it's needed a bill by the end of the session to help pay to keep the Byron nuclear plant open. Otherwise, the company would close the power plant this fall. And while local lawmakers have repeatedly said they are optimistic the vote will end up saving the plant, those in the community are on edge of their seats. 13 News reporter Mary Sugden shares their story tonight.
For now, all Byron and its residents can do is wait.
It brings a good deal of anxiety, one, because we have no control over this process.
The city's mayor says he feels like the region is caught in the middle of negotiations.
We are, simply almost pawns in a chess game between the state and Exelon.
It's a bigger picture than just the forest preserve. It's the school, it's all the townspeople, it's the businesses, it's the secondary and third-dairy things that this would affect.
Byron Forest Preserve District says the tax base provided by the plant is irreplaceable.
Like for 75% of our total EAV. So all our eggs are in one basket.
Which is why this vote won't just impact the plant and those who work there, but all those who call Byron and its region home.
So obviously what Springfield has to say and what they do, will impact all of our lives. And not just Byron, but the county itself. There's a lot of workers that county all the way up to Rockford.
And while there's no definite answer from Springfield just yet, local leaders are encouraged by what they've seen and heard from legislators thus far, crossing their fingers these predictions come reality next week.
I just hope that this is a first step toward a comprehensive energy plan that stabilizes the state, stabilizes clean energy in the state, stabilizes our communities for years to come.
Because these cooling towers don't just provide energy, they power the economy throughout the region. For Year 13 Weather Authority, Mary Sugden, 13 News.
The Senate plans to be in Springfield for only one day on Tuesday. The House would also have to pass the bill it plans to return on Wednesday.
Earlier this week, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker gave his stamp of approval to sweeping clean energy legislation. Today, local leaders gathered to celebrate the Byron Nuclear Power Plant's new lease on life. IBEW Local 15 President Terry McGoldrick says it's been a stressful summer waiting to find out the plant's fate. He's glad lawmakers are able to find a compromise after hundreds of local workers prepared for the worst.
For the people that work here specifically, they had an entire summer of work and shorthanded because we weren't hiring people because they thought the plant would close down. So they had to work out quite a bit of additional overtime, take on additional shifts, all during the pandemic, and they didn't know if they were going to be putting fuel in it or taking fuel out for the last time. So it was a huge sigh of relief for them to know that this is done and it's behind us.
The energy bill calls for the plant to stay open for the next 6 years. Coming up tonight at 9 and 10, Dylan Strachey explains what could keep nuclear workers in Byron even further down the road.
A state-line community is celebrating those that helped save the Byron nuclear plant. The bleachers were crowded at the Byron High School Stadium. State representatives and senators were there too. Organizers say it's a way to thank legislators for their efforts in passing the clean energy bill and also celebrate the advocacy that community members had in getting the word out about saving the plant.
It was a tough road. It was very difficult to pass legislation, but we're here to celebrate the fact that the legislation passed and the nuclear plant here in Byron will remain open. And it's a big deal because it means jobs, it means the tax base will stay here. So a lot of happy people today.
Byron superintendent says they're cautiously optimistic that there will be future legislation that will continue to keep the plant running.
It's been just over a year since Exelon announced it would close the Byron nuclear plant, leaving workers in limbo. But their jobs were saved when a clean energy bill was signed into law earlier this month. Exelon says it plans to invest more than $140 million into the Byron plant over the next 5 years. They'll replace large transformers, upgrade control systems, and complete other projects. And that means more jobs at the plant. Starting next year, they'll need to hire more than 1,500 electricians, pipe fitters, and other trade people. There will be multiple training classes for those who want to work at the nuclear plant. You can find those job openings in a link on our website, mystateline.com.